Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Sarah. Thank you so much. Is it Sarah or Sarah?
Sarah.
Sorry, Sarah. Sorry. That's a good start, isn't it? Thank you so much for being on the Working Wellbeing podcast. Really appreciate it. So, do you want to kick off just by telling us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so my name's Sara Davison, best known as the divorce coach.
Okay.
Really catchy job title. But basically, I help people to cope better with any kind of breakup, divorce, or domestic abuse. But I founded a business after my own really devastating divorce, where I came out realizing that it was a very toxic relationship. And it took me a long time to rebuild. You know, I found out that overnight that my husband not only didn't want to be married to me, but had met somebody else, was madly in love. She was 12 years younger. That
Right.
never helps.
Mhm.
Stunningly beautiful, again, doesn't help. And pregnant. So that was a bit of a shocker. Our son was only 1 at the time. And we worked together. We had a global business. So I'd not only lost the father of my son, who I thought was my best friend, my partner, but also my business partner as well. So it was a huge ripple effect across my entire life. Spent a few months doing the ugly crying on the bathroom floor, spent a few months phoning my mum at 2 a.m. sobbing. And then I realised that, you know, I had to step up. I had to make a decision. Either I carried on that way or I was going to take my power back and do something else. And I'd been a coach for probably 15 years at that point. So I knew I could turn it around. But when I started looking for help, there wasn't any specific to what I was dealing with. So that's when I set up the business to help people. And my mission was to get these tools out to as many people as possible around the world.
And you do that by training coaches, I was reading. Is that right?
Yeah, so I founded the training school in 2018. We've trained over 600 coaches in 27 different countries and 5 continents now, which is super exciting because that's my mission, to get these tools out there so that no one has to feel the way that I did. I've also written a couple of books. So I've got 2 bestsellers, Uncoupling and The Splits. And I have my own podcast called Heartbreak to Happiness. So which is really cool. I love doing that as well.
Yeah. It's nice. It's a nice format just to chat about stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
It is, especially on the topic that I talk about, because we go quite deep and it can get a little bit emotional. But I think it really inspires people if they're in a difficult place, that they can get through it and they can come out the other side.
Yeah. So obviously we're at the Watercooler today, which is primarily like, I guess, a corporate workplace-based event. So what's the links between what you do in the workplace? How can employers support people and whatnot?
It's a really good question, because I think really up until probably about 12, 18 months ago, your personal life, you keep that at home. But there's been a lot of research, some by Harvard Business Journal, some by Zurich, some by lots of different research has been done into the impact of a breakup or divorce on your productivity levels. And yes, we may want to keep our personal life personal and keep that at home, but what we can't stop is the impact. And I talked a bit about the ripple effect on my entire life. I mean, it means if you're going through a breakup that you can't show up to work in the same way that you would as if you were just skipping in and everything was great at home. You know, it is devastating, and it affects your ability to focus. It affects your productivity. In fact, the research shows it reduces productivity per employee of up to 40%, 40%. Wow. And not just
this is when you get divorced, or this is
or a tough breakup. So that would be like not just for the year of that breakup, it would also be the year before, when everything's sort of falling apart and you're trying to cling on to things. And then also the year after, as you're trying to adjust to the new lifestyle. So obviously, you might have to move home. You might have to, have different childcare arrangements. There's all sorts of things. So we won't even go into the dating pool, because that is a bit of a minefield. So, I mean, there's so many things that it impacts. So what we found is that the clients that we work with really struggle to compartmentalize what they're dealing with when they're going through the breakup. So outside of the workplace. So it means they're not able to show up in the same way. They can't focus. Their decisions are probably more erratic. Their emotions definitely are all over the place. Some people stuff that down and sort of on the surface seem to be okay. But a lot of people really, really struggle to sort of have that clear boundary and to make those decisions, or lead a team, or even just to show up to work. The sick rate goes through the roof, absenteeism. A lot of people end up leaving work if there's no real support. And some people get really stuck actually as well. And they talk to the entire office about what's going on, which also reduces productivity for co-workers by up to 5% and line managers by up to 2%. And I've had a lot of HR directors saying to me things like, well, John's going through a tough breakup, and he's been coming into the office in the morning, and I talk to him and he brings me a coffee and we have a nice chat. I think I'm doing my job well because he feels supported. But Sarah, when is he going to get over it and start getting back to normal? And the problem with that is, even though the well-being, wanting to help and support people can actually enable them staying stuck.
Right.
So,
okay.
Talking about your story just re-triggers all the emotions. Right. And if it's like a series of EastEnders and you're constantly giving the latest update, it means you're not really focusing on the future and you're staying very much in the present, which isn't going to help you.
Interesting.
So, So all the tools that we created that I share now with people all over the world are designed to enable you to fast track your recovery through a breakup, whatever breakup it is. Whether it's toxic or amicable, heartbreak, or just it's fizzled out. And we will show our clients how they can deal with those emotions outside of the workplace, or what to do if they do rise up in the workplace, by giving them tools that actually work instantly to dial down how you feel. There's some really cool stuff that you can instantly do, whether it's certain ways of thinking or things that you do with your own body, just to change your physiology, change your thought patterns, change the questions to get a very different output. So we help them with simple steps that aren't overwhelming to take their power back so they can then work through those difficult scenarios. We also advise teams how to work with those people as well in the workplace. So it's kind of difficult if someone's there crying and you're thinking, God, what do I say? How do I handle it? So we prepare you for that and what to do and how to manage those scenarios, as well as keeping them moving forward, which is absolutely essential.
Absolutely. That sounds really interesting. And I love that piece. I often talk about line managers having good conversations about anything, right? With mental health, this sort of thing. And talk about this line of you're responsible to have the conversation, but not for fixing everything, because they can't possibly fix everything, right? Especially the examples that you're giving. They can't fix that person's relationship. It's a completely separate thing, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a conversation, but having the right tools to do it. So it's not just asking them the same questions over and over.
Like you say, you can't be experts at everything. So the thing is, do you have the support to signpost? And it's been a big thing. As I was in Parliament last year launching something called the Parents Promise Alliance, which was to raise awareness of corporates of the impact of breakups. And some of the big companies like Tesco's and Barclays were considering bringing in leave for people going through a divorce or a breakup, a bit like bereavement leave. But I struggle with that because I've seen so many tens of thousands of clients around the world who just get so stuck. If you're going through a breakup, and actually there's a guy that came over to the stand this morning, literally broke up with his girlfriend yesterday, so really fragile. But if what happens is, if you go through a breakup and you have time off, most people will go home, go to bed, cry a lot, immerse themselves in probably unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol, fast food, or just locking themselves away from the outside world and not going out, which actually reinforces that position and keeps them stuck. So also it costs the business a lot of money to have staff off at who knows what time of year that could be. It could be busy season. They could be in charge of a major project or leading a team. So what we say is, compassion is really important, but actually looking at not just time off for people, because it doesn't tend to work, giving them the tools to rebuild, take their power back and manage it, because there are strategies and techniques which will fast track them through that and get them back on track so they can perform, rather than just letting them stay at home and wallow, because it's going to be a lot harder to come back into the workplace after that for most of them.
Absolutely. My mind keeps going, maybe this is completely kind of off, like inappropriate, I guess, but my mind keeps going to, there's a real theme from the people I've been speaking to during even just today about moving to prevention rather than reaction. I don't suppose you could do that in this space, can you? Can you imagine an organization investing in the relationships of their employees? I guess there's something they could do about, because stress at work will have an impact on those relationships, financial pressures, all the rest of it.
I mean, interesting, a lot of the work we do to help our clients rebuild is look at learning the lessons from the past. Because most people, especially with toxic relationships, if you're highly empathetic, you're more likely to attract someone that can manipulate you, because you're easier to be manipulated, right? You want to fix things and be there, and you don't like conflict.
So you think empathy's bad?
Oh, I think empathy is awesome. It just means you've got to get really selective about who you open your heart to and who you give VIP access to your feelings and emotions, because there are people out there, and I'm who are easily taken advantage of. And having been through that, you think, well, domestic abuse wouldn't happen to someone like me. I'm educated. I think I'm pretty, intelligent. I think I'd spot that. But these are world-class manipulatives who can come into your life and they don't show up as they are on the last day on day one.
It's a bit of time. Yeah.
It's the love bombing, it's the gaslighting, it's making you feel $1 million. And then when you're sort of in and you've sort of married, maybe with children or financially dependent, that's when the mask will sit more and more. Yeah, and it happens to men and women, and it's something that we need to be aware of. But actually, part of our work, going back to your question, is that actually you need to learn to spot the signs of abuse. You need to spot those red flags, because we will repeat the same patterns unless we learn differently.
Yeah.
So actually understanding what are the red flags, because I mean, looking back at my own relationship, there were definitely red flags. I mean, massive red flags, huge red flags that I sort of overlooked for some reason at the time, being empathetic and thinking, oh, well, we'll make it work. No, it was perfect, you know. But that's really key to learn that and bank them. So we do a lot of looking at the way we resolve conflict as well, our communication strategies, our attachment styles. You know, certain people are secure attachment, some are anxious, and some are avoidant. Anxious and avoidant is a bit of a loop that you can get into where they feed each other, and that becomes quite toxic as well. So again, having a better understanding of yourself, which is part of the healing and recovery process from a breakup, will arm your team better to not make the same mistakes again. So they can go out and date, but with safety nets that mean that if certain red flags show up, they deploy their parachute immediately and they're out. No more, I'm going to fix him or fix her, or it'll change when they get to know me. No. When people show you who they are, you've got to believe them.
And I feel like if supported properly and get through that, you could come out stronger. I don't know. Like, you know, you talk about this with resilience, which, you know, I've got, my relationship with the word resilience is up and down. But, you know, this idea that, you know, if someone has, for example, suffered from a mental health problem, like, I do not see that as a bad thing. I see that as a real positive thing in a way, because if they're there sat in front of you, having recovered to a certain extent from that, then that shows that they're able to get through that adversity. And it's a similar sort of thing.
I think mental health problem is interesting, because I think sometimes if a mental health problem is, say, you deal with stress or you have anxiety, and that's a problem, well, actually, that's having healthy mental health. If you are anxious because of a real reason that makes you anxious, if you turn off those feelings and numb them, that's the problem.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
So actually, I think we can learn a lot going through a breakup and tough times. And I truly believe that actually sometimes, and I know it sounds a bit weird, maybe to people that are actually going through it listening to this, but that pain can actually be your greatest superpower, because I've learned so much from the hell that I've been to, and I've really been to some dark places. My ex was incredibly manipulative and still is a lot of times, and the challenge is that you have to learn to be a bit of a Jedi. You have to be able to kind of deal with the tough times, and actually if you can deal with the lows, you can then experience the highs, and then you know that whatever comes your way, if you've got through it, you can deal with anything. And I mean anything. Like, you know that you can cope with it. So actually it does build, if you want to call it resilience, but I also think it builds, most importantly, a trust in ourselves. And a lot of people will say, but Sara, when will I ever trust anyone again? You know, I trusted them and then they hurt me and I feel betrayed and they let me down. It's not a case of trusting other people. And this is the really important bit, because if you have to wait to trust someone, you're giving away your power. What we want to do is learn to trust ourselves. If you can trust yourself to make a better decision about who you get into a relationship with, that's all about education. That's about doing the work to do the healing, but also really look under the hood and see what is going on in my head. Why do I attract these people? Why do I feel that is love when actually it's a big red flag? So it might be exciting, but there's a real danger to it. And why do I feel that these secure potential partners are a bit boring? Because quite a lot of us think, well, that's a bit vanilla. I want that excitement. But actually there's other ways of getting that. So we do all that work with our clients, and that is preventative. That does stop them from repeating those same patterns, which can lead to that heartbreak or that devastation, which we don't want to go down.
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to ask her, how much time have we got left? I wanted to ask her a strange question. Where do you stand on Married at First Sight, Love is Blind, all these sorts of programs? Where do you stand on those? Is it good because they're bringing these sorts of conversations to the public attention? Is it bad because it's done in a goldfish bowl and not real life? What do you think?
I love them. That's my guilty pleasure.
It's my guilty pleasure as well. I absolutely love them. Yeah.
I mean, I really do. And I do think, you know, obviously sometimes I want to jump in and go, you know, oh my goodness, there's so many red flags. What is going on? But actually, you know, if you take the bit I don't like is the self-sacrifice of some of the people on it, because you can see they're in a toxic relationship. And if they were my clients, I would pull them out and I would educate on what is abuse and really get in there, so they don't have to go through that journey in such a brutal way. But it is really good to shine a light on some of these personality types, because I think a lot of people don't know that exists. I certainly didn't. My parents are married over 50 years. They're still madly in love, and I have that, romance, and that marriage can work. So if you don't know as a kid that this sort of thing is out there, or even if you do but you don't realize that's your comfort zone, so you're going to be attracted to that because that's what you know rather than what you want, then again, that's why people get into those patterns. So I think it's good for education. I feel sorry for the participants.
I do. I tell you what, I feel sorry for both sides in a way, and I shouldn't really defend the non-victim, but they're under a lot of pressure. They're on these shows. It's all incredibly, like I say, it's all happening overnight. Non-victim. What would you call them? Perpetrator. So I'm not defending them. But you see these like red flags coming out, and you spot them on TV, and you go straight to Twitter, and everybody else has spotted them as well. And there are times where I'm sure they're being manipulative on purpose, but there are times where I just think that's the way they are, and that's the way they were brought up, and that's the way they've learned. And I think they would, well, hopefully they can use it as a positive, but be quite illuminating to watch some of that back and be like, geez, that's how I come across,
That's definitely said from someone who's highly empathetic.
Yeah, they probably don't care.
No, I mean, this is the thing. Perpetrators are perpetrators. They will manipulate, and it is intentional, and they do it to hurt. And they do it in a way they think they're going to get away with it. As you've seen in the recent Married at First Sight, there were 3 perpetrators in there, 2 male and 1 female. And they played out on camera exactly as you'd expect them to. And they react in the same way, but they don't feel the same level of, like, we see it as humiliation potentially for them, or it's obvious they don't feel that, right? So again, no sympathy, no sympathy from me on that one. No. As the patron of a domestic abuse charity, I spend my life picking people up off the floor, and with the coaching that we do that specializes in domestic abuse, they know what they're doing. They're manipulative. They're on there for the fame and the potential money and the fans and the adoration, which feeds their narcissistic.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm on camera now. I don't know. I wasn't back in the mo. I promise you. I promise you. It's okay. Feels so bad for the perpetrator.
It's so true, though, because I'm actually working. I've been asked to be a partnership with a film that's coming out. To Love a Narcissist.
Okay.
And the film director is actually going to be a guest on my podcast next week, because he's written this film as someone that has been in a narcissistic relationship. Right. But he felt sorry for the perpetrator, because he was like, well, maybe they don't know, or maybe it's just how they are. And I was like, so that's what our entire podcast is going to be about. Because
so he's got to be careful directing that you don't come across empathizing with the wrong person.
Well, that's the interesting dilemma. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having emotions and feelings, because that's, you want to hold that empathy. But the challenge with that comes where you enable people to hurt you because your boundaries aren't there. So that you go, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I feel sorry for you. So I'll allow you and enable that person to hurt you more. So again, if you feel sorry for them, you're more likely to find yourself sucked back into that pattern, which is, it is really hard to leave a toxic relationship. And it's also really hard to spot them. So again, that's where training, awareness comes in. So anything like those shows that shine a light on it. I mean, we have world leaders who are doing a pretty good job of shining a light on personality disorders. So they're out there in plain sight these days, but at least we have a bit more awareness and understanding, which is absolutely key.
Yeah. I think the big thing is you employ, if we bring it back to the workplace, you employ human beings. And this is a huge part of their lives. And as with mental health, as with financial well-being, as with any topic you could mention, we were just talking to a disability advocate. Like, workplace can be a space to have these conversations and have skills around these things, because they're transferable as well, right?
Absolutely. And that's why that awareness is so important. I mean, we do the training on breakup, divorce, and domestic abuse companion training and awareness training for corporates, so that you have key people in the business who are aware of these things. So when things are flagged up, when issues come through, they'll go, oh, I can kind of see what that is. I'm not a complete expert in it, but I can signpost to a team of coaches that can get them through it. So I definitely agree with you that awareness and those discussions are super, super important. And that everyone plays a part in a company, because again, like you say, you employ humans, which is perpetrators and victims, survivors. So it's all types in that workplace. So again, having that understanding, but also the tools and techniques to cope with it, because you can't wrap yourself in bubble wrap all day.
No.
Think, oh, well, it's not going to happen to me. It will. And most of us have friends or family members who are toxic. It doesn't need to be an intimate partner. But 21% of any full-time workforce will have been impacted by domestic abuse in their lifetime.
Wow.
Which is huge. And actually 80% or plus will have experienced it from that partner in the workplace via text messages, phone calls, like threats to restrict their behavior, their ability to socialize, certain people they can talk to. One of my clients was a hairdresser, and she was not allowed to cut men's hair, even though she worked in a, in a salon where men and women came and went. So she only for years cut female hair, and then he came in and shot her.
Literally shot her?
Yeah.
Right.
Shot her. And then he committed suicide soon after. And then her 16-year-old son couldn't deal with it, and he committed suicide too. So she survived.
Yeah, right.
But, she's now a massive campaigner. She's amazing. But there's so many things that, are out there that are happening. And you just, I think that's why these conversations are so important. And, as you said, people in a workplace, you've got enough to do, which is where, having a support team that you can, just say, look, go access these resources. We have free online support for corporates, group support sessions for their employees, so that it's like, just try it, go for it. Just because it's so important to have somewhere to send people that's actually going to give them the tools to recover, not just cope with, the legal or financial side, but actually the emotional side, because people need to rebuild, especially toxic relationships are devastating.
Absolutely.
And, I wasn't the person I am today 15 years ago. I was a shell. I was, bigger and unhappy and all over the place. So, it takes time, but there are ways to fast track that. And there definitely are tools, as you said before, Matt, to rebuild yourself so you can be stronger, happier, go on and actually make better decisions about who you date in the future, for sure.
Okay. Probably a good place to finish up. I guess my final question would be, were there any questions that you wish I'd asked you that I haven't? And is there anything like you were desperate to get off your chest in addition to what you've already taught? I think everything you've just discussed so far has been really interesting.
Just maybe if people want to find me, just come to the website, saradavison.com, where we've got group support, we've got resources that staff can use, we've got one-to-one coaching. You can pick your own coach. There's lots of them to choose from, because you've got to have a good match in this kind of thing. You've got to resonate with your coach, but we've got lots to choose from, and we're there to help. So reach out anytime. That's what we do. We're very passionate, as you probably.
I could tell. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.